RWC, TRWC, and the 2017 FCC deadline for 700 megahertz narrowbanding.
Good afternoon. I'm David Felix, the Executive Director of the Regional Wireless Cooperative, which is, as many of you know, represents 18 towns, cities, and fire districts here in the metropolitan Phoenix area. And I'm here to request your support. I briefed the SIEC sometime back on this issue, so some of you may have heard something a little bit about it, or in the case of Chief Hamlin, for example, I think he's been beat to death with this in our board meetings, but I will give you a high-level overview of what this issue is and then request your support. Not to be confused with the nightmare of the 2013 narrowbanding issue. It is somewhat similar, but different. The Federal Communications Commission, FCC, mandates that all 700 megahertz public safety equipment must be narrowbanded by December 31st, 2016, or we refer to it as the 2017 deadline. Very similar to what is going on with narrowbanding UHF and VHF. The impact of this mandate is the potential of losing seamless wide area roaming for the RWC and possibly the TRWC, which employ a mixed 700 and 800 megahertz system. The reason for this is, without going into all the real technical details that I've heard, is we would have two different protocols on the system. To narrowband 700 requires moving to a protocol which is referred to as TDMA, Time Division Multiple Access. Currently, we are using FDMA, which is referred to as Frequency Division Multiple Access. Those two protocols can exist on the same system. However, the ability to seamlessly roam from one site to another is not. You're no longer capable of doing that. Similar to saying if you had to take your cell phone and know where you were every minute you were moving around the city, you would have to change a dial to be able to communicate, for example, back to your dispatch center. And of course, you know, this goes without saying that maintaining government services and the ability to maintain these systems is very, very challenging in the best of circumstances, let alone in the stressful budgetary environments we're all in. So the system changes of this type require long-term planning, minimum 5 years. We have a technical plan that goes out 5 years, or much longer when these kinds of changes occur that makes it even more difficult. We're looking at today, the best estimate, $51 million for the RWC, and similar numbers associated with across the country. That doesn't account for over $100 million in subscriber units. So our radios, consoles to our individual members will almost be double what the infrastructure cost is to RWC members. And the subscriber units that would have to be upgraded or replaced by our interoperability participants in the RWC alone probably is pushing 40 participants that would have to change out their radios to be able to continue to operate on the system once we make that transition. So this rule requires that a majority of the existing system equipment is not just updated, it has to be converted. So we are converting entirely over to 700 megahertz from 8. So this, for these reasons, the supporting agencies that we've identified on the petition that I believe you've been given, and are requesting that when it says the Commission, we're referring to the FCC, modify their current rules for spectrum efficiency to move that deadline from 2016 out to some date in the future. We're kind of open on what that might be. We believe that we probably could get at least a 2-year delay, but we're asking for something even more than that, and that is for us regionally to be able to make that determination when that needs to take place. So today, these are the participating agencies that we've asked for support, and I believe for the most part we've gotten tentative support and signature, or we'll get signatures on the petition once that's been completed. It's undergoing a final review today. Regional Wireless Cooperative, Topaz Regional Wireless Cooperative, the Department of Public Safety, Maricopa County, the Yuma Regional Communications System, the PSCC, and we also have approval today and support from the 700 megahertz Region 3 Planning Committee. Some of the points for consideration in the petition talk about the following. The 700 megahertz frequencies are allocated effectively and used efficiently today in Region 3. So we believe that this mandate can be moved out. We don't have an urgent need for the change today. The TDMA standards have not been fully completed, and what happens here is that particularly subscriber equipment is not in wide use or availability to our members. So when you look at competitive pricing and some of the things associated with the new equipment, it might only reside with a couple of different vendors. So because those standards have just been ratified, manufacturers now have to meet those standards and start building equipment. Product life cycles, costs, and availability are such that agencies are significantly challenged to maintain their infrastructure and subscribers in sound up-to-date working order. This is just the cost that they laid out: $51 million in infrastructure, over $100 million in the subscriber equipment. Frequency management, including narrowbanding, is best managed regionally. We believe that the local agencies, along with our Region 3 RPC, should be the ones to make a recommendation or determine when to narrowband. Today, we don't have this desperate need for additional frequencies because 700 megahertz has not been widely deployed in Arizona, for example. Unlike the East Coast, which has a lot of 700, and in fact probably should narrowband because of the limitation of the spectrum. TDMA conversions for systems using a combination of 700 and 800 like ours require more changes than just to the 700 frequencies. We have to transition the entire system to 700. So, what we're recommending and requesting is that this petition to the FCC to extend narrowbanding deadline to be listed as a participating agency. We're asking the Commission on supporting the RWC primarily in our petition, act as a signatory on our petition that's been provided to you. A couple of updates that I want to provide you with, and I think some of this will be covered in one of the other items you have on your agenda, is that this whole issue of D-Block and the National Broadband Network kind of put a spin into this. Initially, we thought that we would file a petition. There are others out there, particularly from the states of Missouri and Louisiana. The FCC has before them. They would go into publishing a notice of public rulemaking. We thought that would occur by the end of last year or the first part of this year. That's now been delayed because of the language that's been proposed in some of the D-Block legislation, federal legislation, that would require a give-back of 700 narrowband in the future. So the FCC essentially has put all these issues dealing with narrowbanding 700 on hold until such time as that language has been resolved. We have the majority of national public safety agencies or associations that have opposed that language and requested additional funding to include Senator McCain. So today, what we are doing is twofold. One is that we're going to file this larger petition on behalf of the region. But in the short term, we are going to file what's referred to as a request for expedited review by the FCC. The Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau apparently is, our understanding, is empowered to act on some of these for single areas, single states, single entities. So we're in the process of filing that today so that that will take action, or they will be responding to that while the other larger petition is being filed and it runs through their normal process. So it's kind of a two-pronged approach, what we refer to as, or I heard someone refer to as a belt and suspender approach. If one doesn't work, the other one hopefully will. So, again, I don't know if Dale Shaw was on the line, if he wanted to comment on the TRWC's position on this, but Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, we basically ask for your support of this as a signatory on the petition, which we anticipate will be filed within the next 30 days.
And Kathleen Robinson. Dave, do you have any idea how long it will take them to get back to us?
Too bad you can't see me, I smile. Let me say 2 words. Let me give you 2 words that probably will answer that question. Federal government. I was pretty optimistic about pushing this issue, Chief, really hard and continue to do that with the expectation by our next budgetary planning cycle, which would be November this year, we would have an answer. I've been assured that probably won't happen by the time they go through their whole process of requesting public comments, replies, and then finally putting it on their agenda and addressing it. But I just received yesterday a request from the state of Idaho, who is as concerned about this as we are, and was requesting to make use of some of the language in our petition for one that they're going to file. So it's just starting to really, I think, start to develop this tsunami wave with different regions, and I think hopefully that'll cause some pressure to get the change made. But to the answer to your question, I really don't know. My best hope would be before the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Felix.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for your presentation. Just a quick question. Gil Arante with Arizona Homeland Security. What is your sense with regard to the FCC and this petition? Do you have a feeling or a sense about whether this will be successful or not? I'm hearing, just the sense that I get from you is that if this isn't done, we've got some issues, serious issues. What do you feel that the chances of success are?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Arante, I think they're pretty good. One reason is that as I understand, the digital TV transition was about 2 years delayed. So it would make sense that agencies couldn't get on to 700 in certain parts of the country, even if they wanted to, because the TV transition hadn't occurred. So we believe that at least there'll be a 2-year delay or 2-year extension at a minimum. I think the chances are pretty good. I met with FCC staff back in November. They said, or rather back in October in D.C., and they said, hey, we hear you. We're hearing this now. It's just that with the other narrowbanding issues and some other things they were dealing with, it just hadn't got on their radar screen quite the way that some of the other issues that have more of a priority. So I believe the chances of them either giving us an extension or a waiver are pretty good. My concern is when would that happen? Just a whole process, and then when we have this broadband issue come up, it's delayed it even further. So we're going to proceed, and my hope is we keep the pressure on, and we'll get an answer because it's not just affecting our region. The fallback position is one. For example, the TRWC has been planning for this and seemed to be in pretty good shape to be able to meet that deadline. We are not so similarly situated just because of the large amount of money facing us, and so we're looking at several other options to include some type of a lease purchase agreement so that we can still accomplish this if we had to. But our best hope is that we'll be able to extend that out for 6 to 8 years.
I have noticed that in your petition you're asking for a 2020 push back to like 2020.
Yes.
Hopefully somewhere in there is where you'd like to land, obviously.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Arante, we would like to just have it waived and leave the option to the Region 3 to work with their members on this, but that seemed to be reasonable. We've seen petitions that are asking for a delay out to 2025. So we thought that 2020 was reasonable, and our members seem to be pretty happy with that we can get that extension.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you. Yeah, Steve Campbell. Mr. Felix, just a clarification. When we talk about multiple petitions requesting similar things, are we similar in fashion, not only just asking for the date to be pushed out, but also the fact that these regional issues, like the narrowbanding, be done at a regional issue? So are our petitions consistent with everybody else that we're in contact with?
Mr. Chairman, Chief Campbell, yes. It might be a little different twist. For example, the state of Louisiana, Katrina did a wide deployment of this. There seems to be more desperate because their equipment is fairly new and they don't want to have to go through this again. But the basic elements are about the same. The only thing I've seen that's unique about ours is this request for us to be able to manage this locally through our Region 3 Regional Planning Committee. That seems to be different than the other petitions, but most of the language in the other petitions is very similar.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, just a point of clarification. Just for protocols, if we're going to put this to a vote, call for it. Because I am a member of the RWC, as a voting member, I just want to disclose that obviously I voted during that particular time, and there's no conflict, but I might continue to vote on this commission.
Okay. Thank you for that point of interest.
This Dan Wells had a question.
Yes, please, Dan.
David, do you feel there's any danger in making that variance for local control that will make that petition different from the others? In other words, would we be better to align with the remainder of the petitions rather than calling ours out as separate?
Mr. Chairman, Dan, I don't think so. Each one is a little bit unique and different, and in fact address something that they believe is unique to their region. So I don't know that they necessarily have to be carbon copied from each other. I think that it will actually enhance ours in some ways. I'm very comfortable with that language. And in fact, fact, if they didn't want to act on that and they just wanted to set an arbitrary date out there, they certainly could, and just not allow us that kind of flexibility.
Yeah, I think the longest date possible is certainly in our interest, given that all the funded conversations about mission critical LTE voice and everything else. We have no idea where this is going, and to go into some intermediate step in a few years just seems foolhardy. So I think this is a good move for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Justin, just to clarify, so I don't know what your thought is as far as Stephen supporting this, and if so, we're short a member for a quorum then?
Yeah,
but just for, okay.
I believe there's probably not likely be a conflict.
Okay.
And let me just check. Mike Brazier had let me know his CAD system was down. Commissioner Brazier, have you been able to join yet? So he has not quite joined yet.
Okay. So yeah, even if you abstain, but yeah, I don't think there's a conflict either. Yeah, no, I appreciate bringing that up though. So, any other comments or questions?
Just a point of clarification. I understand with the PSCC office. We met with Dave several times on this. We've been following this nationally. We've been hearing out of some of our contacts at the national level that there is some movement afoot to look at an overall extension of this date, which we've talked about. However, we do think that it's because of the delays that have happened with D-Block and a lot of the politics that have been thrown around this issue, that we think it's prudent not to wait and pray that there's going to be an extension, but instead to act now, because it does take a long time, and the number of people that start asking for these petitions will probably have an influence on whether or not they're persuaded by a lot of the national groups that are lobbying them to push the deadline out for everybody. So we think it's a good move, generally. Good strategy.
Given that, can I get a motion to approve the request to be listed as a supporting entity?
Tracy Montgomery Stoney.
Thank you.
Bill Rothschild, second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
This motion passes.
Is there anybody opposed with the phone?
There was all three. It was there. So anyone opposed, just to clarify?
Mr. Chairman, commission members, thank you.
Thank you very much, David.